In this lesson, we're learning about the surface area of a sphere. You may recall that in units H and I, we found the volume of a sphere. Remember that in that formula, the radius is cubed, which kind of makes sense because volume is a cubic unit measurement. In this formula, notice it's 4 pi r squared. So the radius is getting squared in this formula. And again, that should just make sense or make it easy to remember since area is a square unit measurement. So in problem 1, they're asking for the surface area of the sphere. We know what the formula is. They've given us the diameter. Make sure you notice. So if the diameter is 18, then that means that the radius is 9. So we take that 9 and plug it into the formula. 4 pi times 9 squared. So 4 pi times 81, giving us 324 pi, since the instructions asked us to leave the answer in terms of pi. And this is area, so it's square inches. Take a moment, pause the video here so that you can answer the your turn below. In problem 2, we're asked again for the surface area of a ball or a sphere. This time, however, we need to work backwards from knowing the circumference in order to find the radius. So remember that the formula for circumference is 2 pi r. And they have told me that that circumference is 25. So I rewrite it as 25 equals 2 pi r. And I need to solve for r. This is just an algebra equation. In the instructions, they're asking me to round to the nearest 10 square inches. Most importantly, at this point, I know that I'm going to be rounding, so I don't need to carry that pi around. I can just evaluate through. So in order to solve for r, we would divide both sides by 2 pi. So in your calculator, you're dividing 25 by 2, and then divided by pi, gives us approximately 3.97, or 3.98. By all means, I have no problem with rounding that to 4 when we plug it into surface area formula of 4 pi r squared. So 4 pi times 4 squared, so that's 64 pi, and then we evaluate the pi and get 201 point stuff. But again, they're asking us to round to the nearest 10 square inches, so my final answer is 200 square inches. And you might want to pause your video here so that you can address the your turn below. In this example, we're given the volume, which remember we've already talked about in a previous lesson, and they're asking us to find the surface area. So again, we have to work backwards from the volume to figure out what the radius is so that we can take that radius and plug it in to find the surface area. So you may recall the very last example in the volume of spheres lesson had to do with, if I know the volume, how do I work backwards to find the radius? And I told you about a button in your calculator that you need to be able to use in order to take the cubic root of something and find the radius. So once again, here's where we start. The volume formula for a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. Well, I know what the volume is. They gave it to me. So taking this 2200 and plugging it in for V. So I have 2200 equals 4/3 pi r cubed. And in order to figure out what r is, I need to get that r cubed by itself. First thing I would do is I'd multiply both sides by 3/4. Get rid of that 4/3. Okay, so 2200 times 3/4 is 1650, equal to pi r cubed. Next step, in order to get that r cubed by itself, is to divide by pi. Again, we're going to be, well, these instructions don't specify, but let's definitely evaluate that out. So I have 1650 that I'm dividing by pi in my calculator, and r cubed is 525. And so now, in order to figure out what the radius is, I need to take the cubic root of that 525 and find that r is approximately 8.07. So when you go to plug into the surface area, I would have no problem with you just plugging in 8. So surface area is 4 pi r squared. We just found the radius to be approximately 8. So we're taking that and squaring it and multiplying it by 4. And getting 256 pi. And the instructions don't specify, but since the original volume was given to us with no pi in it, let's go ahead and evaluate this pi and get 804.2 square yards. And pause your video here so that you can answer the your turn below.